Jack Grealish to stay at Man City, Phil Foden to win another Player of the Year award, and City to win the undefeated quadruple. Here is everything that we learned from today's open training session at the Academy Stadium. Welcome back to the City Ramble, leading the conversation in the world of Manchester City. If you are new around here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and whilst you're down there, get involved in the City Ramble Discord, big Man City group chat. You can share all your Man City opinions, you can share your opinions on live, we talk about all sorts. You can even come and have a go at me and the rest of the City Ramble contributors if you want. Now look, maybe that last one was a little bit hyperbolic. Manchester City probably aren't going to be winning the undefeated quadruple this season, but I do believe that the open training session was a decent insight and a reason for City fans to get excited. I've got a list, as I always do. Someone mentioned it in the last video, why I always have a pen in my hand. Well, it's so I can write it down, so that I can write my ideas down and share them to you. Most of them nonsense, but hopefully this list in front of me is everything that we covered, or everything that I've picked up on from the open training session. I want to start off with what I feel like is a really interesting dynamic, and it's this guy on screen. If you can't work out, because it's not the best of screenshots, don't get me wrong. All credit to Man City, by the way. They live streamed the event, these screenshots, all rights to them. But it's Pep Linders, of course. I'm sure most people have worked that out by now. Manchester City's new assistant manager, Pep Guardiola's new right-hand man. And let me tell you, when I was only watching the stream, I wasn't even training, I wasn't even in the stadium, let me tell you, I would already run through walls for this guy, because his energy is infectious. The way he was on the pitch, and you might say, look, the cameras are out, he's putting on a show, he's trying to make an impression. That could be the case. But we've heard from other testimonies from his time at Liverpool, the guy is full of energy when it comes to coaching. And I feel like that is exactly what City have needed. Because you go back to last season, or the end of last season, there were reports coming out when Guardiola was doing his reshuffling, and I feel like there was the talk about the fact that some coaches last season were quite passive. They weren't necessarily getting involved. They weren't giving the constructive criticism that some of the players had been used to. It was all kind of flat. And I think, you look at some of the performances last season, and I don't even mean the results, because, I'm always a person, if we perform well in some certain situations, if you perform well in a final but you still lose it, then that's a bad performance because you didn't win it. It's a one-off game. You get me? But I mean, across a 38-game season, a lot of the times, if you perform well but the result doesn't come, you can't really complain. However, City were losing matches last season and performing really badly. It looked really flat. But I feel like with Pep Linders, obviously Kolo Touré's there as well, it feels like there's a renewed sense with not only in the players, and we'll get obviously speak about plenty of them as well, but the manager, Pep Guardiola, he feels energised. But this man, I feel like if City are going to do anything this season, bringing Pep Linders in will be looking back at it as an absolute masterstroke, because he is getting about the coaching pitch, he's barking orders, he's leading drills. At times Guardiola was sort of sat back and just letting Pep Linders do the work, and obviously not in sort of a lazy way at all, but it was just great to watch, and I really am excited to see how their dynamic builds. I mentioned in the introduction, and obviously in the title of this video, Jack Grealish. Now, this was really interesting. Hands up if you'd have expected this guy at 1 week away, 10 days basically from the start of City's Premier League campaign, to be taking part in an open training session. It looked like for all the money in the world, Jack Grealish was about to leave Manchester City. And let me tell you, if you watched the open training session, I'm sure you'd have picked up on it as well. He was great. He was really looking quite sharp. Obviously he didn't go with the club to the Club World Cup. It felt like, that would be that. We would never actually see him at City ever again. But we're a week out from the start of the season. You'd assume he goes on the trip to Palermo for the pre-season friendly. Still very much part of first team training. And there was that talk. I didn't do a video in it at the time, but there was something on the City Ramble TikTok covering it. There was that report, I think it was in The Independent, that said Grealish and Pep bumped into each other at Oasis, no less. I mean, the greatest band in the world, repairing relationships at Manchester City. You love to see it. But there was talk that they had a little bit of a conversation, and Jack Grealish came away from it thinking, maybe my future is better off at City. I'm not going to necessarily say that Pep promised him the world and said that you're going to be starting every game, but I don't know what was said. It didn't say in the report, but there was that talk, and obviously we see him back in training. We see him looking good. One thing I picked up on, which I thought was really interesting, about halfway through it, they were doing some attacking drills, and it was nothing sort of overly complex, and it basically had, I'd say, 4 or 5 different attacking positions, all attacking at once. Was a couple of fullbacks whipping balls in. There was wingers, there were strikers, which Omar Mamouche and Erling Haaland were sort of rotating in. There was a centre attacking midfielder, and they're just sort of linking up. There was no defenders as such, sort of blocking them. They were just doing very simple attacking drills. But there were 2 left wingers. One of them was Jeremy Doku, and one of them was Jack Grealish. Now, if Jack Grealish was about to leave the club, would he be the second choice, let's say, for argument's sake, or one of 2 wingers in a drill like that? Look, maybe because it's open training, it was easy. Maybe I'm doing this video and there's absolutely nothing we can read into it because it was all for the cameras and whatnot. I don't know, but that just got my sort of, it got the cogs whirring a little bit. I thought it was interesting the fact that, because you would think if Grealish was out, then maybe they would have someone else on that left-hand side rotating. I don't know, but it was interesting to see. I thought he played, I thought he trained really well. He looked like he had a smile on his face. Obviously, we know he's a much-loved member of that dressing room. And yeah, just interesting to watch. Another standout performer from that training session, a guy who, for me, all summer at the Club World Cup, now in this sort of pre-season little bits and bobs here, is looking happy again. And I've mentioned it on this channel before. I think it was after one of the Club World Cup reviews. A happy Foden is the best Foden, because Foden loves to play football. He said it himself. He did an interview, I think it was with Still Ryan, really sort of cool interview where he's fishing with his kid, and it's very chilled, and he's going through sort of his thoughts and feelings about life, about football, and he basically says it himself, like he just loves to play football. You get the feeling with Foden, yes, the lifestyle will no doubt be great, the money, the all of that sort of luxury business, but you don't get the feeling like he's in it for the fame. You don't necessarily see him, flaunting it. I'm not trying to, I'm not saying that's bad if players do that, but with Foden, you very much get the idea that he's in this because he loves to play football. And last season, I don't think he loved to play football. There were times when obviously he looked like he struggled, and he opened up about that himself. It feels like, for me, Phil Foden's on the verge of having a great season. I'm crossing my fingers anyway. Obviously, Kevin De Bruyne has now left. It does feel like that stage is set for Foden to ascend and take the crown, basically. Obviously, you can see in the back of there, it's worth noting as well, Rodri in training. I know there's a lot of speculation since the guys returned from pre-season that Rodri wasn't training. I think there was a report from the Manchester Evening News saying that he has been doing training a bit of away from the first team, so this might have been one of his first team sessions back, because they're just trying to be careful with his injury. But obviously, he did the full thing. He didn't look in discomfort at all. Another shout out, if you haven't, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Plenty of content ahead of the new Premier League season and throughout it as well. It's going to be a big year at the City Ramble, so make sure you are involved. Get in the Discord as well. In terms of the standout players, the players that look nice, the players that look sharp, the players that look like they could have a big season, some of the players that need to have a big season as well. Oscar Bob, obviously, last season was his breakout year. Everybody was waiting for it. He shone in pre-season, and then that heartbreaking injury just before the start of the campaign basically ruled him out for the entire season. He's looking good. I had a fear, I can't remember what video it was earlier on in the summer, where I mentioned the fact that will Oscar Bob get the minutes he needs this season that he would have had last season if not for the injury, to really make an impression on Guardiola and sort of get the opportunity, because I mean, I'm sure everybody watching this agrees, it isn't a quality issue with Oscar Bob. You are just sort of sat there going, is he going to be able to play as much as he should do? Is it going to be another Cole Palmer situation, or maybe a James McAtee situation where you can see the talent there, but they might have to leave to get the minutes elsewhere? I don't know. According to, inside sources and whatnot, Oscar Bob is looking great. Not only in this open training session, which, most people would have picked up on themselves, but in the normal training sessions as well. He's looking really good, and I'm fingers crossed that he can be of use to City this season, because I felt like Savinho was decent in his first season. There was some good parts. There was some, at times really good parts, or sometimes really bad parts. But you do have to think, Savinho wasn't coming in to be City's automatic starting right winger, and he played so many minutes for a new lad, very young, 2021. You've got to feel like that part of it was possibly, why his performance levels weren't necessarily up here, and he wasn't making that impact whenever he did play, because he was playing all the time. And it's hard, when you're Guardiola forward in your first season, just ask Riyad Mahrez. So yeah, Oscar Bob back on that right-hand side, competing for minutes again. Obviously, you've got, plenty of forwards there. Ryan Shirky was involved. He looked really sharp. There's a moment where Guardiola was speaking to him, sort of debriefing, coaching him, and sort of you can tell that he's sort of taking it all in, and he was putting the yards in, closing down balls and whatnot, which I thought was really interesting. Let's speak about Bernardo Silva, because obviously he is now Manchester City's new captain. He did a little speech before the training session got underway, so all the fans could hear it. And look, I know Bernardo Silva is a divisive character at this moment in time. If you're being hateful towards him, do us a favour, click off this video, because he's one of City's best players in the modern era. You might argue he's a Man City legend, and I think he's absolutely up there. I can understand why some might be critical about the captaincy pick. Rodri's there, Ruben Diaz, whatever. Honestly, I'm fine with it, because I feel like in this Guardiola City team, the captain isn't necessarily what a traditional captain is. It's not a Vincent Kompany type leader. It is done by committee. There's a captaincy group for a reason, and we'll speak about another one of them very shortly. But with Bernardo Silva, I was really impressed with the way he spoke, and I know you can talk a good game, and that doesn't necessarily all the time translate to what happens on the pitch. But I genuinely got the sense with Bernardo Silva. I said bonehead then. The Oasis talk is getting to me. But with Bernardo Silva, that he is really wanting to put this right. I don't think he'd have accepted the captain's armband if he wasn't. And you might say, well, he's only got 1 year left in his contract, whatever. Maybe the club extended it. Yeah, I don't know, and that might cause an uproar. But I do feel like, from listening to him speak, and he was saying the same sort of stuff last year. It isn't like this has just come out the blue either. He was one of those who was coming out, facing interviews in the darkest period and going, this isn't good enough. In this interview he did with Natalie Pike today, he was saying stuff along the lines of, I've played in dressing rooms with Vincent Kompany, Fernandinho, Kevin De Bruyne, David Silva. That isn't acceptable, what happened. This isn't acceptable at this football club, because we should be winning. We should be challenging for all of the stuff that you as fans want to hear. And again, you might be able to talk a game, but I honestly believe that he does absolutely think that. Another one of the captains in that captaincy group, and the picture really contradicts what I'm about to say about Erling Haaland, because it looks like he's sort of lying there doing absolutely nothing. But at the same time, he was always in this open training session. You could tell that he's come of age in terms of his role in the City team, because he was going up to players, especially the new lads and some of the younger ones, putting an arm around them, making sure they were okay. You can tell he's a real sort of figure, and that makes sense, because obviously he's probably... Is this fair to say? Probably City's most well-known player globally. He's the superstar. He's the face of the team, I guess. So that kind of makes sense as to why he will be like that. But, I'm not naming names, but can you think of sort of similarly leveled superstars, in terms of the fame and the names? Maybe a little bit more egotistical. Erling Haaland, to me, comes across as somebody who's quite, feet on the ground. He's much loved by the players. He's someone that now they're looking up to. Guardiola himself, apparently, asked for Haaland to be in the leadership group, in the captaincy group. So that speaks, volumes on its own. And it just, I just feel like I picked up on it. It looked like he was really getting involved. Obviously, he was looking sharp. He was looking good. There was a couple of really bad misses, but I think everyone now has kind of accepted that Haaland's got a bit of a howler in him every now and again in front of goal. But when he performs as he does, and he sort of gets as many goals as he does, I don't think you can necessarily complain about that. I feel like I'm saying this about everyone actually, but I do feel like with Erling Haaland, he's set for a really big season. And finally, the last talking point for me anyway, James Trafford obviously made his sort of first appearance in front of City fans. He did a little bit of an interview himself, and he was being quizzed about, how he saves penalties, and it was a funny quote. He just said something along the lines of, I think the question was, how are you so good at saving penalties? He goes, oh, I just try to save them, innit? Something sort of really nonchalant like that. But you could tell that he sort of slotted in. He made some great saves. I will say as well, on the other hand, Ederson was looking sharp as well, and I feel like obviously Ederson is in that camp of players who have been much maligned, heavily criticised over the last year or so. The last time Ederson had somebody coming in like a number 2 as good as him was obviously when Ortega was coming in, and City went on and won the treble. And I feel like, you know, a lot of people would say that was Ederson's best year in a City shirt. So I wouldn't write Ederson off yet. What I will say is, I don't know how many lives Ederson has got, because you do have James Trafford there, who is waiting in the wings whenever it might be. It might be the first month of the season. It might be 6 months down the line. It might not be until next year when Ederson leaves. But this guy is obviously going to be City's first choice goalkeeper. I nearly said number 1 goalkeeper. He's already got the number 1 shirt on, so that wouldn't make much sense. But yeah, really enjoyed watching him sort of settle into the team. And I think otherwise, yeah, just nice to see the guys back. I don't know what it is. I know we've had the Club World Cup and people moaning about the fact that there was far too much football. But for me, it feels like this pre-season has almost been longer. And I'm just sort of fully waiting now, fully excited for the season to start. We've got the Palermo friendly on Saturday night, and then it's on to the big one next Saturday evening time. Man City versus Wolves, opening game of the Premier League season. Like I said, plenty of previews on this channel, so make sure you're subscribing. Let us know if there's anything you picked up on from the open training session that we haven't mentioned in this video. And until next time, it has been a pleasure, and we will see you later.